Candidates Forum for the Yarra Ward of Nicholls. My name's Rod Quantock and I'll be hosting this evening's event with our candidates. As you see, I'm wearing my Make Yarra Great Again face mask. These are available for $10 each. There's also a wind cheater, there's a tie, there are mugs, there are cufflinks, and a range of wallpapers available to you too. Just contact me and I'll send them in the mail to you almost immediately. Now, let's get down to what we have to do. First of all, the housekeeping. The toilets are there, or they're there, or if you're in a two-storey house, they could be up there, or they could be behind you, or they could be that way. Emergency exits, well, that's up to you. We're not going to worry too much about that. So tonight's event is hosted by the Fitzroy Residents Association and the Yarra Residents Collective. They've partnered together to put this event on. We had the Melbourne Ward 2 nights ago. We had Langridge Ward last night. They've all been extremely successful, and between them, they've already had over 1,000 views. So it's a great way to meet the candidates. Now, basically what we'll be doing this evening is we've sent our candidates a set of questions, so they know what they're going to be asked in advance. These questions have been distilled from hundreds of questions we've had and basically grouped into those that seem to be the top priority for the people of Nicholls Ward. Oh, and I must remind the people on Zoom with us, as you all have already, put your microphones on mute. Now, the format is that each candidate will have 2 minutes at the beginning to introduce themselves and put themselves in the context of the campaign. Then we will go to our questions, and then a little bit after 8 o'clock, we'll have a 5-minute interval so people can go to the toilet there, or indeed, as I will, run down the back of a very long terrace and grab a cup of coffee. Then we'll come back to the final questions and we'll end the evening with each candidate having a minute to sum up. So thank you all very, very much for joining us online. I think you'll find this very, very intriguing. It's a great way to meet your candidates. It's much better than sitting in a town hall. This is a very, very personal way to engage with those people you have to decide on when it comes to voting. So we're going to begin with the first questions, and the questions are asked in order of where our candidates appear on the ballot. Now, I should point out that we've had, where are the questions? There are the questions. We've had one apology. Sasha Beitner can't be with us this evening, and she does send her apologies. And Gerald Fisher, well, I'm not sure. I'm sure he's an apology, but we're not quite sure. So the first question, is everybody ready? This is for 2 points and a chance to go in the draw for the Mazda hatchback. This is from David Young of Nicholls Ward. Right. And his question is, heritage conservation is an important part of sustainability. The most sustainable building is one that already exists. Do you see heritage preservation and conservation as one of Nicholls Ward's and Yarra's top priorities? Who'd like to take that? Amanda?
I was just going to ask, Rod, if you would like us to introduce ourselves first, perhaps.
Oh, sorry, you're right. Absolutely, Amanda. I'm getting ahead of myself because the football's on and I want to get home. Yes, all right, sorry. Good on you, Amanda. That's why you're on council. Okay, here we go. Sorry, Jared. Sorry about that. Gerald Fisher. Where did Jared go? Yes, Jared Fisher. Oh, see, Jared's not with us.
He's an apology.
Yeah, no, he's the apology. That's what got me. I didn't. Guy Barker. Sorry, Guy Barker. Let's start again. Good evening, and every candidate gets a minute to themselves. So, Guy Barker, your minute starts now.
Thank you, Rod.
You're very welcome.
Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. And I really also wanted to acknowledge all the other candidates who are running. And I'm confident that whomever of us are elected, the residents of Nicholls will be really well represented in the next council term. So my name is Guy. I'm standing as a candidate for the Reason Party. I'm a long-time Yarra resident, having lived for many years in both Fitzroy and Abbotsford. And I'm running on a platform of compassion, collaboration, and an evidence-based approach to dealing with the issues of concern to our local residents. I'm not a politician. This is the first time that I've ever run for any election. And while council has done some wonderful things for our community, I think it's time for some new voices who can bring some fresh ideas to the table. The next term of council will be an incredibly important and difficult one for many reasons. And so I would advocate for council to play a leading role in supporting the post-COVID recovery for our local businesses, push for greater trust and transparency, and ensure that we have a clear and coherent planning strategy that allows for sensible development while protecting our much loved heritage buildings and the village vibe of our community. The problem as I see it isn't so much a divergence of policy. I'm sure all of us here actually agree on a great deal. The problem is one of implementation or lack thereof. We've got objectives, we've got strategies, we've got initiatives. What we lack are practical outcomes that better serve the community. Whoever is elected to council will need to find a way to work effectively and collaboratively with their council colleagues. We live in an increasingly polarized world where it is becoming ever more difficult for us to have sensible discussions about the issues that affect our community. Council is often slowed down by partisan bickering, political grandstanding, and personal point scoring, and residents have had enough of it. I pledge to work respectfully, collaboratively, and to always remember that above all, I'm here first and foremost to serve the community that I love, and to remember that when it comes to our visions for the community, there's far more that we agree on than what sets us apart. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy, and thank you for the welcome to country. I'd also like to pay our respects to the traditional owners of the platforms on which we meet, Guy Zuckerberg and Google, and we pay our respects to their billionaires past, present and future. Now, Deborah Thorpe, you have 1 minute, beginning now.
Thank you. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation and their elders past and present. Thanks, Rod. I'm Deb Thorpe, and I'd like to thank the organisers of this meeting for giving us the opportunity to present to our community. I'm a local. I've been here for 18 years. I've raised my family. I like to eat, play, walk, ride, see my friends, exercise my dog, enjoy art and music, and garden here in Yarra and Nicholls. I'm a member of the Rushall Community Garden, and the Rushall Community Garden is an amazing and dedicated group of people there who are driven to provide a local space where people can come together to share skills, and they share their produce and they educate the community and each other, and they've created this amazing oasis on a piece of land that was formerly unused. I'm standing because I love this community and its natural beauty, but I also love its beautiful buildings and streets. I'm standing as a Labor candidate because I'm a member of that party, and I'm a member of the party with principles that I believe in, those of social justice, public health care, public housing, education, and the rights to fair pay and safe working conditions. And these are all important to me. I'm also a community nurse, a union member all of my working life with the ANMF, and I've specialised in diabetes education and support, and I use art therapy in my practice. I've also studied in public health, and I'm an advocate for the voices of consumers in their own healthcare. I've nominated because I want to advocate for a health promoting community with enough outdoor space for everyone, with more trees and greenery in our streets to cool the suburbs, and where we can all access healthy food or grow it if we choose, and where we have lots of safe transport routes, and where we can walk to our local shops and find them vibrant hubs of community connection and the needed resources that we need. And I'm a great listener. I respect the wisdom of the community, and I'm committed to bring their voices to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deborah. And now Sophie Wade. Welcome, Sophie. And your minute starts now.
Thanks, Rod. I'm Sophie Wade. I started coming to Nicholls Ward from a very young age after my parents started a company that was based in Fitzroy. I was and still am of the view that Nicholls Ward contains some of the very best parts of Melbourne. Brunswick Street in my lifetime has been a vibrant, lively, welcoming place for people from all walks of life. Further north, Edinburgh Gardens must be one of the most pleasant spots in Australia to spend a Sunday afternoon. Carlton North and Princes Hill, the sites of my and many other Melburnians' painstaking driving lessons and driving tests, are stunning, historic suburbs that I always feel fortunate to be able to walk, drive, or cycle through. Now, I live on the edge of Nicholls Ward at the nexus of Nicholls and Langridge on Smith Street. Here, I am privy to the daily joys of Yarra, excellent cafes, fabulous little shops, divey bars, and vibrant clubs. I am also right in the centre of Yarra's construction boom. There is a massive apartment building going up to my northwest, next to Woolworths, and countless construction sites to my east. As such, I'm extremely conscious of the development pressures that Yarra faces. That said, I'm also a beneficiary of such changes, living in one of the major complexes built in the last decade. I think it is important to have a councillor who is intimately familiar with the pressures facing Fitzroy and Collingwood areas of Nicholls Ward, and I think these lessons are also highly relevant in representing Nicholls residents from further north. That is not to say that I'm anti-growth or anti-development, more that I see the acute need to ensure we develop sustainably and sensibly and protect our heritage and what makes Yarra special. I'm also keen to ensure that Yarra continues to be a leader in and ramps up its efforts to address climate change. I'm a lawyer and I've worked at a large international firm for almost 6 years. I work in competition and consumer law, mainly for regulators, the ACCC and ASIC, which means I have a keen sense of what's fair and a serious distaste for people out to mislead the public. The jump from acting for consumers to residents seems a logical one to me, and one that will involve more close interaction with people trying to improve their lives and the lives around them, like I'm sure everybody on this call. I love this area, I'm hardworking, and I'm keen to represent Nicholls residents for the next 4 years.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And now we come to M. Sage. Welcome, M. And your minute starts, wait for it, now.
Thanks so much, Rod, and thanks to all the other candidates. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which I'm sitting and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So as you know, my name's Em Sage and I'm running as an independent. I'm running for City Council because I want to serve my community and connect with the people like you who live around me. I've spent 13 years working for the federal government in a variety of national security related roles. So I know Canberra, I know the culture and the personalities that shape it. It was an honour to serve and protect the Australian public, but I didn't really get much of an opportunity to directly engage with and work with the people who were impacted by the policies and the advice that I was providing to government. I resigned from my government job so I could run for City Council and work directly with the people I will hopefully represent. I'm chosen to run in this community because I live here. I shop here. My children go to early learning centres here. A sneaky shout out to Fitzroy Early Learning Centre. It's an incredible, incredible place. My family loves our little 2-bedroom abode and we've really made this place our home. Your issues are my issues. I'm pretty keen to tackle them with your input together. I've been listening to the community, and a common theme that seems to be emerging is that some members of the community feel like they've not been listened to and that key decision making in council hasn't been communicated to them. If I were elected to City Council, I'd consult, I would listen and I would communicate the reasons for my decision making. What else do I do? What's my policy platform? Well, I'd start with a COVID recovery plan. I believe this is one of the most pressing issues impacting our community at the moment. We need to make sure that as we transition to a COVID normal, we don't leave people in our community behind. City Council needs to move quickly to get funding to the people who need it and support initiatives that restart the parts of our economy that have been hardest hit. If this means changing operating policies and procedures to speed things up, so be it. I've got no time for unnecessary red tape. I'm keen to make sure our daycare services and schools can operate under COVID normal. I believe services that support primary caregivers going to work are incredibly important, not only for economic recovery, but for things like gender equity, diversity and inclusion. I'm passionate about protecting the outdoor spaces that bring us together as a community. I not only include our parks and playgrounds, but our heritage sites and buildings. I believe
Emerald, Em, I'm sorry, we're getting very close. So if you could wrap up, please.
No problem. So these are just a few of the issues that I care about, and I look forward to answering any questions on other aspects of my background and policy platform as the evening progresses. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emerald. And now Amber Anderson, your 2 minutes starts now.
Thanks so much, Rod. I come to you today from the land of the Wurundjeri people, and I pay tribute to them and give respect to elders past, present and emerging. I'm Amber Anderson, and I've been a resident of Fitzroy North and north of the river for over 10 years. Yarra is a terrific and diverse place to live, and I care about what happens in our area and to its people. While it's not a prerequisite, I am a candidate who actually lives in Nicholls ward, and I find that nexus important as a voter. For the last 20 years, I've been a lawyer and management consultant and a not-for-profit board member. I have strong skills in teamwork, collaboration, strategy and negotiation, which I feel will be useful on council. I'm also a semi-retired professional V8 race car driver, and I've developed resilience and self-motivation in a long male-dominated sport. The way I see it, councillors are here to represent you, the community. While all decisions might not be popular ones, we all deserve a say on the issues that impact us. I'm proud to be running as an endorsed member of the Animal Justice Party. I'm here for the community, and I'm also putting my hand up to be a voice for those who don't have a voice themselves. That includes animals and people. Some of the issues pertinent to me in Yarra are preserving and defending the unique heritage of our area, nurturing the small village feel and protecting the unique height of our skyline, and supporting our local businesses to get back on their feet and to increase employment. I will advocate for accessible pedestrian crossings for our aged community and improving the unbelievably lumpy, bumpy pavements that these people have to navigate to get to public transport and shops. I nominated because I do believe we can also do better for the animals of Yarra. I will work with other councils and authorities to nurture and protect the flying foxes in Yarra Bend. I'll encourage Yarra to lead the way as ethical animal owners who don't buy their dogs from puppy farms. I will strive to reduce the convenience killing of 41% of Yarra's cats and 4% of their dogs. And I will advocate for practical support to enable you all to live peacefully with all the hungry possums, the beautiful flying foxes and the loud birds. I will strive to bring transparency to council process and serve the people who know this area best, you. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you very much, Amber. And Bridget O'Brien. Welcome, Bridget, and your minute starts now.
Thank you, Rod. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung as the true sovereigns of the land on which I live and work. And I reflect on the Wurundjeri word Wominjanka. Full meaning can often be difficult to translate, but we all know simply it means welcome. Welcome if you come with respect. And I do come with respect. Respect for my community, respect for what makes Yarra such a special place to live. I truly care about the culture, the character, and the place that is Nicholls. This runs deep because I've lived in Yarra since the age of 5. I'm a current Nicholls ward councillor, so I can provide continuity. In the last term, I learned a great deal from our 2 departing but long-serving Nicholls ward councillors. As 3 independents with diverse views, we had to work hard to come to chambers with a united position on issues specific to Nicholls. That unity resulted in better outcomes for our community. I am a collaborator. I collaborate with my colleagues and with the community. In my term as councillor, I work closely with the community to achieve the council refusal for the inappropriate Peter Monty development. I have relied heavily on the vast expertise and knowledge in our community on heritage that resulted in a 3-storey height limit for the majority of the historic Queen's Parade shopping strip. I've made significant contributions to wildlife conservation along our green corridors and ensured extra native tree plantings across Yarra. I've worked on safety and equitable use of public space. I've also worked hard on improving community consultation, participation in decision-making, transparency and access to information. I've worked to unite our community, to connect different groups and individuals with each other, to find solutions that can work for all of us, and I've worked to bring us together with respect. I want our community to be interconnected, informed and resilient. I want our community to lead council decision-making. I want a council that serves us, respects us and supports us. This is what I will continue to work towards if I am re-elected. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bridget. And now we come to Catherine Noon. Welcome, Catherine. Thanks for joining us, and your 2 minutes starts now.
Thanks, Rod. Hi, everyone. My name's Catherine Noon and I'm an independent candidate. I also would like to start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people, traditional custodians of the land that I'm on tonight, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I also acknowledge my gratitude that we share this land today and my sorrow for some of the costs of that sharing, and my hope and belief that we can move to a place of equity, justice and partnership together. I love being a resident of Nicholls Ward. I grew up in Gore Street, Fitzroy, and I've always lived locally and been active in our community. In 2002, I started volunteering at the Carlton Neighbourhood Learning Centre, and through that I learnt what great places our local neighbourhood houses are, and I got more involved in a range of things. And then I wanted to understand how are policy decisions made that affect us here on the ground. So I did a Master's in Policy and Human Services, and then I also started working in the public service. But I kept up my involvement in local activities, mostly through the Holden Street Neighbourhood House. And with my experience in public and community sectors, I've learnt a lot about making the most of really tight, limited budgets to meet community needs. And while we're all facing fresh challenges due to the current pandemic, feelings of isolation and loneliness aren't new for a lot of people in our ward. In the 2016 census, nearly 30% of households in this area were single-person households. I'm really passionate about helping our community and our area, and we need clear action and transparent council processes as we do things differently beyond this pandemic. And we've got a great diverse bunch of people here in Nicholls Ward with heaps of great ideas about how we can do this. So let's work together to find practical solutions and come out of this pandemic even stronger. I'm here as a community advocate to make sure your voices are heard. Together, we can make sure Nicholls Ward keeps being a great place to grow up and grow old. Thank you.
Good on you. Thank you very much, Catherine. And now we come to Amanda Stone. Welcome again, Amanda, and your 2 minutes starts whenever you care to start.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Amanda Stone here, current councillor and long-term resident. And like all of you, if you're at home tonight, coming from the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country, where I pay respects to elders past, present and emerging. I know and love this city. I've lived in every ward of it, and as a councillor, reluctantly making planning decisions over many years, I've inspected nearly every street from every angle, and I understand just how changes affect the community. I've watched the steady march of development pressures north, starting in Richmond, moving through Collingwood, and now they've firmly settled in Nicholls Ward. And it makes me angry that we have a planning system that's inaccessible to many residents, where you need deep pockets and lots of time to join an appeals process, and where council decisions are routinely sidelined through appeals to favour developers over local residents. And I've watched Nicholls Ward residents over the last 4 years spend weeks of their time and lots of money simply defending livability. I'm well versed in our planning system, and I know what we need to do to provide the best protection possible within the current system for the things that we love about our city: its heritage, its streetscapes and its human scale. I'll push for these controls to be developed where they're needed, in Nicholson Street and St George's Road, but I also think the whole state planning system is a dinosaur in need of reform. And if elected, I will make that a priority. Like many of you, I've been saddened at the impact of COVID on what makes Yarra, Yarra, our arts and creative sector, our huge number of small businesses, largely in the design industries, our street dining, our culture of festivals, performances and exhibitions, our love of just getting together and sharing sport, culture, history, even protests, a real Yarra thing. So I'm absolutely committed to supporting the whole community to build forward. We can't build back, we've got to do things differently, and to seize the opportunity we have right now to create a more sustainable and enduring city. I commit to working with fellow councillors and community leaders and business leaders to developing a COVID recovering plan, incorporating the climate emergency plan, and building a Yarra version of the Green New Deal that's sweeping the globe, of sustainable homes and businesses, local employment, investment in social infrastructure, and to push for more public housing. Because
Amanda,
these
I'll
are the
have to
things
get you to wind up now,
that
please.
build our community's resilience to future shocks. I'm up for this challenge and I look forward to serving the community with the Progressive Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And now we come to Annabelle Wilson. Welcome, Annabelle, and off you go.
Thanks, Rod. So I'm lucky enough to be the last candidate of the last virtual town hall meeting. But before I begin, I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge that we all meet on Aboriginal land, a land that was never ceded, and pay my respects to elders both past and present. I'm currently on Wurundjeri land where I live, work and play. So I'm Annabelle, mum to 2.5-year-old Primrose and a born and bred local. I'm proud to be an endorsed Labor candidate and I'm running because I've lived here all my life and I love this area and the people in it. I've been brought up seeing the value in positive social change. I remember accompanying my mum to VCAT in my school uniform, and I even distinctly remember a council meeting that she brought a jar of waste to and passed it around for all the councillors to see. My dad bought his first home just around the corner on Canning Street in the 70s for a whopping $27,000. And 2 years ago, I bought my first home here in Carlton North too, for just a little bit more than that. In my professional life, I've been proud to work for a charity called Cure Brain Cancer Foundation as head of advocacy for the last 6 years, where I'm responsible for organising and empowering the community to create grassroots change. We've seen huge strides in funding commitments and policy change. And last year, our community succeeded in getting the first brain cancer drug listed onto the PBS in over 30 years. I advocate alongside the brain cancer community with a very personal connection. I lost my beautiful husband, Josh, to brain cancer in 2017. 2 months later, our daughter Primrose was born. She shares a birthday with her dad. As a working single mother for the first 2 years of Prim's life, I know how critical council services are. I place value in healthy, accessible spaces, and if elected, I'll also be a vocal advocate in the protection of the heritage of our community. I'm delighted to be running alongside Deb Thorpe, who spoke before, and a truly formidable team of Labor candidates across Yarra. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. And now we'll go back to where we began with the questions. So I do apologise for that. And I again thank Amanda for pulling me up on that. So we'll go to the question again, just because it's fun. This is from David Young of Nicholls Ward. Heritage conservation is an important part of sustainability. The most sustainable building is the one that already exists. Do you see heritage preservation and conservation of one of Nicholls Ward's and Yarra's top priorities? First hand up. Annabelle. Straight
Thanks,
in.
Rod.
And then we'll come to Guy and then Deborah.
Thanks, Rod. I'm really happy to talk to this question because the heritage homes in Nicholls are particularly special to me. I grew up in one of these 19th century terraces, and as I just mentioned, a couple of years ago, I bought my own terrace here in Carlton North, as you can see by the fireplace behind me, so I could bring my daughter up here too. New developments are important to the growth of our community, but I feel they need to respect the cultural, social and historical significance of their surroundings, including respecting the deep roots of our First Nations people and their connection to the land through things like finding opportunities for conservation along waterways, as an example. Council's heritage controls really focus on Edwardian and Victorian era housing, but they're pretty weak in terms of interwar housing. For example, I was recently told of a 100-year-old heritage home in Princess Hill, which was granted a permit to be demolished by council because it didn't fall within these controls. So if elected, I would lobby for and use all levers possible to be a vocal advocate in the protection of our heritage properties.
Thank you very much. And sorry, was it Guy to be next? Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Rod. So look, I think we will all probably echo similar sentiments here about heritage preservation and conservation, which is that it is clearly a vital priority for the community. As Annabelle said, development is inevitable. We shouldn't look at it as something to fear. It's something that is desirable. Many people want to come and live in Yarra, and it's something that we should absolutely embrace. But of course, if we were to leave developers to do what they wanted, then they would simply run rampant and they would destroy much of the heritage buildings and value that we all love. There does need to be some pragmatism about the way that council works with state government. All the amendments that go to the planning scheme have to be agreed upon by the planning minister of the state government. So I think anyone who comes along and tries to tell residents that council has this sort of unlimited power to stop unchecked development is not telling the whole truth. So I think there needs to be some element of realism in this approach. We need to be able to work closely with the state government as well, who have their own planning strategies and objectives. I think a really good example of where the community has succeeded to some extent has been the Queen's Parade developments or development applications through Clifton Hill, largely through the hard work of some of the residents groups. Amendment C231, I think it was passed and has put in a number of controls that will certainly help in retaining a lot of the heritage value around Queen's Parade. The KG Luke factory at 26 to 56 Queen's Parade, I think, is a good example of the kind of built heritage that we should be looking to retain. I, for one, love that building. If anyone's seen the proposed designs for that development, it bears absolutely no resemblance whatsoever to the original building. And so, you know, it's really wonderful. There's obviously a lot of work that needs to be done, but it is one great example there of the community and the residents groups strongly advocating and pressuring the council and having some really successful outcomes there that have been, I believe, agreed to by the state government or about to be agreed to.
Okay, thank you very much, Guy. We'll come to Amber, then Sophie, then Amanda, and then Bridget, and then Emerald. So we'll start with Deborah. Amber. Thank you,
Rod. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, could I say just one thing? Just to Guy, my father worked in the KG Luke factory. How
sensational.
Sorry, Amber, off you go with your racing car answer.
It won't be that speedy.
Okay.
No, it will be. Look, it's a great question, David, and something that I just talked about, something I'm passionate about. I see preservation and conservation of Yarra's heritage of utmost importance. In fact, I am very privileged to live in a heritage building, and we're just in the process of spending significant time and resources restoring that building back to its heritage origins as best we can, and uncovering some amazing historic components in the process and documenting that. These buildings and areas represent our history, and I feel that they need to be protected and restored. I think the City of Yarra has done a great job so far, and I think with the increased development applications that we're seeing and a lot of refurbishment of neighbouring dwellings, there does need to be an element of preservation and conservation stepped up a notch, so that we can share all these important buildings like the one that your dad worked in, and we can all share those for generations to come. Thanks.
Thank you, Amber. And Sophie?
Yeah, I think I again echo what has been said already. It's such a beautiful area. I think heritage preservation and conservation are top priorities for Yarra, but in particular for Nicholls with its beautiful historic buildings and streetscapes. For many, including me, the archetypal image of Melbourne is a terrace house with some cute plants on the balcony and around the corner from a cafe and a converted warehouse. And walking down our streets, you feel a kind of magic that comes from the commingling of old and new. Our heritage buildings and laneways tell a story, and it's one we're part of. I did think I'd acknowledge that the link in the question to sustainability, and I think it is important, like Guy and Annabelle alluded to, there is growth in our area and there probably will continue to be development to some extent. And so I think also these planning controls need to make sure that those new buildings going in are as sustainable as they can be, because if it's not a beautiful old heritage building that needs to be safeguarded, we want to see new properties like living up to the absolute best standards. And then that will mean that, we've got people living close into the city who might not need to use cars anymore because it's so easy to get around here, and who might not be in big old houses that they were out in the suburbs and might be more efficient, and that is very sustainable. And so I think where it's not our beautiful heritage that does need to be protected, it's important that we look forward to that being as higher end as it can be in terms of sustainability.
Good on you. Thank you, Sophie. And Amanda?
Not a lot to add after all of that, I have to say. I do want to acknowledge that Amendment C231 was gazetted today. Thank you to the resident who passed that on. Great effort by the community, but it also tells you how hard it is to secure heritage protection in Yarra. That was 4 years of an amendment. It took a long time and lots of effort, but we got there. I'd also like to highlight the sustainability elements of it that have been pointed out in this question. There's huge embodied energy in demolishing and building a new building, and it's extremely wasteful, a lot of the industry that we see in Yarra. And it's much easier to reuse big old industrial and commercial buildings with their big flexible floor plates. And they really should be preserved and can be reused. Some of the smaller houses, I think we probably, if we're going to talk about sustainability, there's a few adjustments that we do need. We need to make it more possible to have solar panels on heritage houses, which has been very difficult, and to also open them up in some ways to let more light in, because a lot of the Victorian terraces are actually quite dark. But I do totally endorse heritage support. I've been a strong advocate. Heritage tells our story, it informs our future, and it's important to all of Melbourne.
Thank you, Amanda. And Bridget.
Thank you. Yes, I think I personally see heritage as a top priority, and I would like to see it better represented as a priority within both statutory and strategic planning areas of council. I will work towards getting better heritage controls in place so that the character of our residential streets are not compromised by inappropriate and unsympathetic designs, as well as many other things in terms of our planning departments. I will also work to ensure that there is heritage oversight on all council planning matters. I will work for implementation of the heritage strategy and for better resourcing for a heritage department of council. I'll also work towards making sure the expertise provided by our Heritage Advisory Committee is made accessible to councillors when we come to decision making. As it stands now, minutes of advisory committees are not readily available to councillors, and I was not supported in my attempt to make advisory minutes available to the community via the Yarra website at the last council meeting. So yes, I do believe heritage is a very important thing. I see it as a top priority, and I think we can do better at Yarra, and I will work to make that happen.
Thank you, Bridget. And Deborah. Oh, your microphone, Deb. There you go.
Sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah, thank you. Yes to all the other sentiments presented so far. I just wanted to add that our heritage is not just our built heritage, but we need to be thinking more broadly and thinking about our natural heritage and the cultural heritage that we also have in this area, which makes it unique and which makes it a place where we want to live. So I also think that we need to document that heritage, and I know that documentation by community members in particular was part of the success in Queen's Parade, and I think perhaps that's an area where we could do better so that we can understand that heritage and value it more. So I think the community needs to be ever vigilant, and the council needs to be responsive to the community in preserving our heritage for future. Thanks.
Thank you, Deborah. And Emma, you would like to answer? We need your microphone, Em.
Lovely, thanks so much. Sorry about that.
There's so much to think of, isn't there?
I just want to say, completely agree. Heritage is incredibly important. I think what people have an issue with is not so much, whether these massive big apartment complexes look any good. It's the fact that they're so huge and they overshadow residential housing and devalue the price of that residential housing and the properties that those residents are on. So I think that, we absolutely need to do more. I think that local council can do more, and I think that we can do more by identifying special interest groups that can potentially weigh in on this and provide support. We can use bodies like the Australian Local Government Association to lobby federal government and to help federal government put pressure on the state government to make the legislative changes that we need. That's probably what I'd add. Thank you.
Thank you, Em. Now, Catherine, did you want to say something?
I think it's great, like Guy mentioned earlier, that we've got a panel of people who all really care about this, and we know that our residents, we all really care about our local history and our local heritage. And as Annabelle said, like her, as a kid, I was part of all kinds of fights to try and help protect some of our local heritage, and our cultural heritage is so important to us all. So I don't have a lot to add, but thank you all for being so passionate about it and keeping on fighting the good fight.
Thank you very much, Catherine. I think that's everybody's had a chance to answer that question. So the next question is from Carol Wilkinson of the Yarra Climate Action Now. Are there actions that as a councillor you would take to progress and enhance the City of Yarra's climate emergency plan? Yes, Deborah, you were first, and then we'll go to Sophie, and then to Amanda, and then to Guy. And thanks again, Deborah. You need your microphone. There we go.
Thanks for that question, Carol. I think Yarra Council's made a great start by raising the profile and the urgency by declaring the climate emergency. Some of the things that could be progressed include electric vehicle recharge stations across Yarra, more of those, electric vehicles in the Yarra fleet, and looking at things like electric buses. I think we've already made a start on water harvesting in Edinburgh Gardens. I'm sure most of us would be aware of the dirty great big hole in the middle of the gardens there, but it's there for a good reason, and it's great progress. And the recycling strategy is being rolled out, but I think it's certainly something that we need to prioritise, the collection of particularly of green waste and food waste to produce mulch, and for innovative programs such as feeding to soldier flies, which can then be fed to poultry or as pig food. We could think about doing innovative things like making more recycling stations in shopping strips, having seeding grants for creative solutions, and of course increasing our tree canopy. So I think we've got lots and lots of strategies that we could do more in this area.
Thank you, Deborah. We'll come next to Sophie, then Amanda, Guy and Catherine. So Sophie?
Great. So the first and clearest action I would take is to ensure that the climate emergency plan is properly funded. A lot of work's gone into it in identifying actions that will be useful and will really drive down Yarra's emissions. Obviously, it's been a bizarre year, and that's unfortunately affected the first and a bloody crucial year for the Yarra Climate Emergency Plan, but all is not lost. The mid-year budget review will be conducted soon after your new councillors are sworn in, and 3 people from this very room or browser window will be able to decide what's done with any savings from the first half of the year. Not shockingly, as a Greens candidate, one of my top priorities for any spare cash will be actions under the climate emergency plan. At a mid-year budget review and any future budgets, I would be advocating that the climate emergency plan be prioritised for budget allocations over certain or most other non-urgent matters. I'm also keen, and I know that current councillors, prompted by Amanda, have already taken steps in this direction. I'm keen to ensure that where possible, COVID-19 measures, which I expect we'll need for some time to come, also address the climate emergency. For example, the introduction of pop-up bicycle lanes serves a clear dual purpose of addressing the health emergency, allowing people to travel in a socially distanced manner, and also the climate emergency, encouraging a low-carbon form of transport. Another example would be grants that allow businesses to transition to operate in a COVID-safe way that allows them to also transition to more climate-friendly operations. For example, outdoor dining means less air conditioning. Thanks for the question, Carol. YCAN has been a leader in pushing council to be the best it can be, and as a resident, I'm very grateful for that.
Good on you. Thank you very much, Sophie. And now Amanda.
Thank you. We have a climate emergency plan because I kicked it off 3 years ago, and I'm extremely proud that we've actually got one. But the journey was a rocky one, and it was partly because some councillors weren't convinced that we needed one. But by the time we got to adopting it, everyone was proud and unanimously supported it. And I think that's the sort of journey we still need to take with the community in a way. We're all on board and lots of people are on board, but in terms of actions that I would take as a councillor, we really do need that community mobilisation. The big part of the climate emergency plan is community mobilisation, and if it's funded, as Sophie has suggested, that will be a very big part of what's needed. So I would certainly be supporting funding the climate emergency plan as part of COVID recovery. There's plenty of agreement that that's what needs to happen. I would also be pushing along the planning scheme amendment that I also kicked off this year that would require all new buildings to be zero carbon in their performance. I'd be helping existing building owners and occupiers with all that embodied energy to reduce their emissions with tailored advice from the Yarra Energy Foundation, which needs to continue to be funded to do its job and do more of it. And I definitely help mobilise the community with grants for climate action, advice on behalf of renters to landlords to switch to renewables, to get off gas, to reduce emissions, and to support people to use less carbon intensive forms of transport with an integrated transport plan. There is so much we can do, where to start and where to stop, but the bottom line is funding, and I'm pretty confident looking at the potential councillors sitting here that probably won't be an issue because we all see how important it is.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And Catherine.
Thanks, Rod. And as everyone has said, I mean, we've declared a climate emergency for a reason. We have to take action to have a healthy planet for us all to be able to live on and continue to do all the other things we want to do. And one of the objectives, I believe, in the climate emergency plan is talking about how we ensure that our community is safe, healthy and resilient. And when more has that been highlighted, the importance of that than this year. And we need to make sure that we're incorporating those actions and strategies into what we're doing and how we make sure we're all connecting on that and learning how we can do these things without it seeming too onerous. And there are so many different groups out there that have so much knowledge of what we can do and how we can do it and how we can connect. So let's keep doing that and keep moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Catherine. We'll come to Bridget and then Annabelle. Thanks, Bridget.
Thank you, Rod. Yes, I guess I do truly believe this is an emergency, and I believe that for a very long time. And I think an emergency does require urgent implementation, urgent action, and hence I would advocate for stronger implementation and more quickly of the climate emergency plan strategy. I don't think funding should be diverted away from COVID relief for our community, but I do think that our climate emergency strategy could have a greater focus on biodiversity and specifically wildlife conservation. I want to see through the Gardening for Wildlife project. I want to ensure wildlife refuge areas along the catchment green corridors, and I'll also continue to champion our endangered grey-headed flying fox colony. I want to see through increases in extra native tree plantings to provide foraging opportunities for wildlife. And I think we should also we should keep our weekly recycling resources going for our community to bring the community along on this journey. I think biodiversity is incredibly important to the climate issue, and I think that is something that we really need to include within this strategy and plan.
Thank you, Bridget. And Annabelle.
Thanks, Rod. Well, firstly, I'd just like to start by saying that I wholeheartedly support Yarra's climate emergency plan that Amanda mentioned was unanimously adopted earlier this year. And some great ideas have already been brought up. So just to build on that, I just really want to say that I really believe in asphalt busting to make way for more green spaces and reduce the urban heat island effect. And I think we can all think of some examples of areas in our neighbourhood that we look at and go, that doesn't need to be asphalt. I also think that Yarra Council and Yarra councillors can be vocal advocates for systemic change at a state and federal level. Yarra Council is a leader in addressing our climate emergency, so we can use these experiences and learnings from our environmental initiatives to provide proof and lobby for larger scale policy change as well.
Thanks, Annabelle. And Guy, I'm sorry I skipped over you. It's quite the juggle all these little thumbs. And then we'll come to M. Thanks, Guy.
No trouble at all. Thanks, Rog. Thanks to Carol and to YCAN for the question. And of course, thanks to the council for their good work that they've already done here. To paraphrase Kevin Rudd, who may not be the most popular person anymore, he once said that climate change was the greatest moral challenge of our time, which is certainly a sentiment that I agree with. And honestly, the climate emergency and everything that it stands for should probably be underpinning our approach to just about everything that we do as a council, both small and large issues that relate to open spaces, to transport, to development, and so on. I think the example that Deborah raised about the stormwater capture project in Edinburgh Gardens is a really great example of something that's probably not the most glamorous project, but something that's incredibly useful and a really great example of something that contributes towards the kinds of things that council can do. I would like to see more being done around environmental controls for new buildings and developments, although I think this probably overlaps with state responsibilities in some areas as well. Passive design principles are something that should be much more strongly incorporated into new developments. It costs little or nothing to incorporate passive design into new buildings, and the benefits are really the greatest when those principles are incorporated into the entire design and build process from site selection and the ground up. Another just quickly, I suppose, smaller scale issue is the waste management issue on a household level. Obviously, the council once again has begun some really wonderful trial projects with the glass recycling and food and organic waste, which is looking to expand across the entire municipality. I think we certainly need to look at building on that. There are some physical limitations, and I know residents have raised concerns in the past about having more bins on their properties. So I would like to explore looking more at community bins for recycling projects. I know the city of Port Phillip has trialed similar projects. And of course, what we can do about businesses as well. Hospitality businesses in particular have a huge amount of food and organic waste as well. So looking how we can manage that and reduce the landfill there. Thanks.
Thank you, Guy. And Em.
I guess I would just add that as our population grows, I think waste management is going to become a bigger and bigger issue. So I think it's fantastic that we're all sort of thinking about this and thinking about things like, recycling food waste and using that to feed our green spaces. I also agree that a climate emergency is very real and it's very urgent and needs urgent action. I would suggest that given the budget and funding is such a consideration at the moment, perhaps we need to be very targeted with the way that we go about implementing a lot of the great measures that Amanda spoke about. Perhaps we should look at who the biggest polluters are in the municipality and look at really incentivising them financially, but also with things like positive publicity. So, for example, the sustainability awards that are given out, we could look at increasing categories for those awards to include businesses that achieve a neutral carbon footprint. Thanks.
Thanks, Emerald. And yes, we should have an awards night for that, and I should be the host, and the City of Yarra should pay me to do it. Anyway, we'll move on. Anybody else like to add anything to that? Because we'll try and squeeze in one more question before we go to interval. And this is from Helen Nankervis, the Ageing Well in Yarra group, and this is one that's very personal to me. How will you make Yarra an age-friendly city responsive to the needs of older residents with benefits for people of all ages and abilities? Yes, Deborah. And then Annabelle, and then Catherine, and then Amber.
Okay, thank you for this question. And I feel like I have to jump in there because I'm a nurse. But I am passionate about healthy ageing and supporting older people to live independently. And age in place is an important part of my future, I'm hoping to. As people get older, they need their resources to be closer and accessible. And so while we're revitalising our shopping strips, we need to keep older people and people with mobility disabilities in mind. So making sure that all our spaces are accessible. We need to provide seating for people to rest when they're on their way to the shops. We need to make sure the footpaths are safe. And we need to make sure the crossings and the public transport access points are also safe. Home and community care services are very important for to maintain people in place, supporting people with shopping and cooking and personal care. Not only help to maintain people in place, but also provide people with local job opportunities, and that's a win-win for everybody. Social connection is vital for everybody, and we've already heard stats about people living alone. Social connection helps people stay well, and so supporting things like library services, special interest groups, U3A groups, special interest groups, social and recreational groups is also part of staying healthy as we age. Hosting health and education sessions for people living with conditions such as arthritis and diabetes are also important part that council can play a role in, and providing things like respite care and carer support, or facilitating other organisations to run those sessions and services. Council's got a lot of opportunity to be involved in making sure that older people can live well in the community. Some of the services they'll provide and some of them they'll coordinate, but we need to have a profile for older people in, especially in our Nicholls ward. Thanks.
Thanks, Deborah. And Catherine.
Thanks, Rod. And thanks, Helen, for asking this question. I'm really glad that you did. I've worked in ageing for almost 10 years and was really happy when Yarra Council signed on to the Age Friendly Victoria Declaration in 2016. And I know there's heaps more we can be doing and we should be doing. And we also need to think more broadly about ageism, and there's casual ageism is quite a problem in our society, and we often don't realise we're doing it, and we really do need to be mindful of that. In working in ageing over the time, a career highlight was definitely getting to run the Seniors Festival in Victoria one year, and that really does rely on great programs that are run through councils, and really great to be celebrating older people and seeing what older people want to do to celebrate Seniors Month and Seniors Week. And so, as I've said earlier, I'm also really committed to making sure that Yarra is a great place to grow up and grow old, and we know that age-friendly improvements help the area be great for everybody of all ages and abilities. And a big part of that is also the walkability. And as Deb talked about, really important to be thinking about benches and places to stop when you rest, but also really important to make sure we've got enough time to cross at the lights. I don't know about you, but getting across Alexandra Parade, you often get stuck in the middle, so they don't often allow enough time for us all to get across. So we need to be advocating for changes to things like that. And also making sure that we all know, where are the public toilets? If we're going out for a while, where can we go? And we also need to keep up this chat about what are we doing to address ageism. So I'm really happy to keep talking about that with you, Helen, but also you, Rod.
Oh, thanks, Catherine. I feel very special. Annabelle.
Thanks, Rod. This is a great question and very timely, considering today is the International Day of Older Persons. It's ironic to think that I really came to understand the importance of age-friendly once little Primrose was born, and I had to try and push her pram around our local footpaths. One of the ways I would help make Yarra an age-friendly city if elected would be to see Yarra Council conduct a footpath audit and work to fix these areas that are causing issues for older and differently abled residents, as well as those of us with prams. I think it's crucial that our footpaths are maintained, and it's easy to forget how much we rely on the humble footpath to get around. I've actually been talking to lots of locals about these sorts of issues, and there are many great ideas within the community about this topic. And I recently had a resident suggest that we also need more seating on footpaths to further help with accessibility for those unable to walk too far, which Deb and Catherine just mentioned, and I think it's a really great idea. If elected, I'll also be advocating against the privatising of services that used to be run by council in relation to home care, which has been in the news recently. And yeah, like the others mentioned, I just want to say thank you to Helen for asking this question. And I'll finish by saying that I think it would be really worth talking to community groups like yours and other locals to make sure that we are creating solutions that actually work for the people who need them.
Thank you, Annabelle. Now we'll come to Amber and then Amanda, then Guy. And is there somebody else who put their hand? Oh, Sophie, we'll come to you last in that line. So Annabelle?
I'm Amber, but I'll answer to Annabelle.
Oh, sorry, Amber.
It's all good, Rod. We know. Look, I mentioned when I introduced myself, I'm passionate about improving access for our aged community. The Animal Justice Party values are kindness, equality, rationality, and non-violence. And our older residents and mobility impaired residents have really had a very ordinary 2020. With COVID, they've had limited social connectiveness, and it is very clear that the value of kindness will be very important to them going forward. My 94-year-old grandpa actually grew up on Canning Street as an orphan and ward of the state. He visits our area frequently and likes to go for a stroll and point out things that are still around today, which is incredible. Watching him and some of the local residents struggle, I think it's very important to advocate for the safe crossing areas, meaning exactly as Catherine said, introducing a crossing without obstacles and enough time to cross the road. So I'm with you on Alexandra Parade. The improved care of those wavy, bumpy sidewalks, looking out for those trip hazards, supporting Annabelle's order is a terrific idea, particularly around the Clifton Hill interchange area where a lot of the people access to go and get their shopping and around that area. I like to think I'm a reasonably able-bodied person and fell myself there tripping over an obstacle. So I advocate for council-supported exercise programs and facilities to continue. And I'd also like to see some tasty vegan and vegetarian options in meals for our people, and to include delivery of companion animal food with the meal delivery services to our elderly where possible to help them. In conjunction with the Leading Animals Shelter, I would like to think about introducing a Senior for Seniors program where we introduce some older dogs, some of them up for fostering, to members of our aged community for a few hours, and it provides some fun and laughter and companionship for both. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you very much, Amber. And Amanda.
Thank you. I think one of the things that's often missing when talking about an age-friendly city is a strengths-based approach. We often look at what older people can't do and the accommodation we need to make in the physical environment. And yes, an age-friendly city which is physically accessible to everyone is certainly a good city for everybody. But in Yarra, we've got groups of incredibly competent older people who are living rich and fulfilling lives of continuing to contribute and lifelong learning and networking and sharing. And I think one of the roles that a council can play is to facilitate that ongoing lifelong learning and connectedness with those groups that are already organised. That said, we have some of the poorest and most marginalised older people in the state living in Yarra, and we really do need to be alert to the invisible older people. I've had the great pleasure of chairing Yarra's Active Ageing Advisory Group for many years, and I've benefited from the advice and guidance of a very diverse membership from public housing tenants, cultural groups, LGBTIQ elders, carers, empty nesters, and so on. And what they've told me is that a council needs to have a response that's really flexible and diverse as the citizens who live here. And some of those that are invisible are those who are insecurely housed, the homeless. We're increasingly becoming aware of housing insecurity for older women, something that needs to be addressed. There's a very large number of people in Yarra, older people who are asset rich and income poor. I can recall doing a delivered meals run with our home meals service and being really shocked at the number of people living in quite beautiful, expensive homes, but needing support to feed themselves and to make ends meet. There's a lot of hidden issues with older people in Yarra, and I think the council has a vital role to ensure equality and dignity for people as they age.
Thank you, Amanda. And Guy?
Thanks, Rod. And once again, I'm really just going to echo some of the great things that everyone else has said already. And what I said before as well in regards to the climate emergency, I think also applies very much here in terms of creating an age-friendly city. Really, so many of the things that council does in terms of footpath maintenance, ensuring accessible spaces, all of these things should be undertaken, keeping in mind our aging population. I guess some of the best ideas, that the others had touched on here, Catherine had talked about issues around isolation and loneliness and single occupancy households, which certainly will apply to much of our aging population as well. Amanda just now spoke about the invisible and marginalized parts of the community as well, and ensuring that we're reaching out to them. Annabelle, you mentioned the privatization of aged care, and that's something that I feel very strongly about as well. It's really problematic seeing, especially what's happened in the last, few months around aged care and COVID. I think a lot of that comes back to the privatization of aged care. And finally, Amber's concept of dog fostering for older folks as well. As a dog owner myself, I think it's a brilliant idea. I think actually it would really have some great therapeutic value in helping those members of our community as well. So great ideas all around.
Thanks, Guy. And Sophie.
Again, everyone, great answers. I feel like I'm running alongside some really, really strong people, which is just so exciting. I think, as Guy just mentioned, then this year we've really seen what can go wrong if we don't look after our older people. It's just been about as dire straits as you can get, and that's really because we haven't designed our systems and our world with older people in mind. As our population ages nationally, we want people to be living active, healthy social lives for as long as they possibly can, allowing people to age in place or to age in Yarra if this isn't where they started. It means that people stay proximate to services, shops, cafes, their friends, and if they did start here, their neighbours. I learnt Chinese for a long time, and embarrassingly, I can barely string 2 sentences together now, but there was one term that came up a lot in my education, which was fangbian, which means convenient. And when things are convenient, people keep doing them. If it's simple to leave your house, to go downstairs from your apartment and to go to the local cafe, you'll keep doing it, even as your joints age and your eyesight diminishes. As I'm sure many of us have experienced, either personally or through family members, the longer one keeps doing stuff for themselves, whether for joy or for things they need, the longer they can keep doing it. I personally would have loved to see my grandfather living somewhere like Yarra while he aged. I don't doubt he would have kept being able to go to the shops, to visit a neighbour, or to hit up his beloved opera or a gallery for much longer than he was able to do from his home on an orchard on the outskirts of Melbourne. In terms of how long before moving into an aged care facility, because you keep up that kind of social and movement, then I think he just wasn't able to keep up when he was isolated. In terms of how I will make Yarra more responsive to the needs of older residents, I think the first step is having that front of mind, why it's so critical that older folks can live in Yarra, in a densely populated area like this. It's just a sensible place. My gut reaction of how to make it more responsive is wider, smoother footpaths and less stairs in council buildings. And these things, as the questioner pointed out, would benefit other residents in Yarra as well. But I'm also aware that I'm young and I don't understand all of these things. And I think everybody on the call tonight has pointed out that we've got some great residents groups in Yarra, and there are people that we can listen to. And I'm very, very willing to listen to hear what would make things better.
Thank you, Sophie. And Em.
Thanks so much, Rod. I'm not going to echo the fantastic ideas that candidates have noted. I would simply say that I think a community mobilisation is going to be key to making some of these great ideas happen. And I'd really like to see some of that happen around, making our community an inclusive one for people of all ages. Thanks.
Thanks, Em. Well, thank you all for getting this far. It's, again, I think people are going to find it very difficult to choose who to vote for. You've all been really fantastic. We're going to take a break, and I'm just putting up a new virtual background, and this will mean that the interval has started. There we go. I think that's right. Where is it? Is it there? Let's go over here. There it is. There's a new virtual background. That means it's interval. If one of you would like to hum some interval music for 5 minutes, that would be really helpful. I'm going to make a cup of coffee. We'll see you soon. Okay. Well, we're returning when you're ready. Oh, that's good. Makes a big difference. Okay, we're popping back on screen now. There we are. Welcome back to you all. And Catherine's back, and we're waiting on Bridget, Guy, and Amanda. Well, look, congratulations. It's going really fantastically well. It's, you're all extremely impressive candidates. I'm moving to Nicholls. Amanda's back, and we're just waiting on Bridget. We have a little over 150 people watching. And as you know, it's up on Facebook, and we seem to be doubling the number of people who ultimately watch it. And I think because of the football, there'll be quite a lot more watching it online. So welcome back to you all. And we'll move on to our next question, which comes from Alexander Marks of Langridge. What is the purpose of separated bike lanes, and do you support the removal of car parking or other amenities to create new bicycle lanes? Who'd like to take that? Oh, there we go. Guy's up, and then Sophie, and then Amanda.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks, Alexander, for the question. This is obviously a pretty fraught issue in the community. We all support better integrated transport and active transport. We want to encourage cycling use in the community, but we do have to balance that with the needs of the community when it comes to parking as well. So there are absolutely going to be some instances where we want to have protected bike lanes, and that will necessarily involve the removal of some car parking spots. What I would like to see more of, though, and something that has been discussed by councillors in the past and has been done successfully in other jurisdictions, both in Australia and overseas, is this notion of, I suppose, cycling superhighways or super blocks, where you actually have cycling traffic integrated into the car traffic as well. This would necessarily involve the lowering of speed limits in our residential streets, but that's something that council has already been advocating for, and can also help, I suppose, increase the vibrancy of our communities, makes it safer for children and pedestrians. And so we have a number of streets that run through different parts of Nicholls and Yarra. Just as a quick example, Napier Street runs all the way from Gertrude Street all the way up across Alexandra Parade and up through to Edinburgh Gardens. It's already, many of these back streets in Fitzroy are kind of de facto cycling superhighways already, where there are no protected bike lanes. And because the traffic is moving so slowly, the bikes are able to share the road with the cars, and there's no sense of danger. It's all quite safe. So I would like to see that formalized to a greater degree. It does mean that we can retain some sense of on-street parking still. Like I said, there's certainly going to be some areas and some instances where we do need to use protected bike lanes. And this clearly needs to be done in a way that is respectful to the community. I know in terms of the Elizabeth Street bike trial in North Richmond, although it falls outside of Nicholls, it's been a particularly fraught issue, and it has been quite polarizing in the community. Generally, I support this notion of an iterative trial where we put the trial in place and then it gives the council data and evidence and feedback from the community. That's exactly its intended purpose, excuse me. After 12 months, council will be able to make a decision about the merits or otherwise of that protected bike lane and really make an informed decision moving forward.
Okay. Thank you very much, Guy. We'll go next to Sophie, and then Amanda, Amber, and Catherine. And if anybody else wants to kick in, put your hand up now. But Sophie?
I think that was well said, Guy. I think COVID has brought bikes to the forefront of our minds. First, we all have nothing to do, so going out cycling seems more appealing to both keen cyclists and the least keen cyclists. Second, we're contemplating how we will get to where we need to go without getting on crowded public transport or adding more cars to the road. And the answer screams out as bikes. Personally speaking, I'm a keen but not particularly strong rider, so I'm unlikely to ride on roads where I feel like there are cars or even other bikes whizzing past me with little room to spare. I know I'm not alone in feeling this way. Separated bike lanes are a very good way of addressing this where it's possible. But there are other adaptations that can be made to roads, as Guy said. Even just slowing down roads makes them safer for cyclists. That way we can ensure that all riders, young, old, with limited mobility or just a little nervous like me, are able to take to the streets with confidence and improve their cycling strength. I think that many options can be considered in the move to more safe cycling space, and some of them probably will involve the removal of car parking and other amenities. But as Guy said, and as I'm sure other candidates will repeat tonight, there is a caveat to that, which is that it needs to be done in consultation with our communities, with residents and other users of the affected streets. I've ridden on the Elizabeth Street bike lane and I loved it. I felt really safe. But the fact that that was done with the Vietnamese speaking residents of the street not properly being informed or given a chance to have input was pretty gross, a fact which I think most of us would agree with. But I suspect that particular lesson has been well and truly learned. And we can ensure that our communities are better consulted next time, including by having meetings early on in the process, online if not in person, and through surveys and other mechanisms like you'll say, Yarra.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And Amanda.
Thank you. I think it's important to remember why we encourage cycling in Yarra to start with. It's good for your health, it's good for our pockets, it's enjoyable, it's good for the planet, it's good for the economy, reduces congestion, saves travel time, reduces car dependency, and it generally reduces our need to spend huge amounts of money on roads. To the question about the purpose of separated bike lanes, they're really important in providing an added layer of safety for bike riders along key routes, key transport routes, by removing conflict between cars and bikes, and also providing that buffer to avoid car dooring. I think everyone would know that cyclists are shockingly overrepresented in road accident statistics and deaths, mainly from being struck by moving vehicles. And that's a rate that we just wouldn't tolerate with deaths and injury with motor vehicle users, and we certainly shouldn't tolerate it or accept it with cyclists. Separated bike lanes do provide that extra layer of safety. They're experienced as safer by people, and they also encourage reluctant riders from those underrepresented groups like women in particular, children, older people, and people with mobility impairments. And so we really do want to get more different, more diverse riders onto the road and feeling confident to do so, and it's one way. I acknowledge that they're contentious. The Wellington Street bike lane took 10 years from its inception to its completion for lots and lots of reasons, and Elizabeth Street trial has also been problematic with the removal of parking in both cases. These represent the wicked problems that we have in a city where there's congested public space and conflict over how it's used. And I think we really need to find another way to solve those. I'm a big supporter of deliberative panels to really get to grips with the trade-offs where someone's not going to win, get everything that they want, but we really do need to find a balanced outcome. I love the suggestion made by Guy. I'm sure there are lots of other innovative approaches, but there is a good purpose to separated bike lanes, and I do support us continuing to implement them wherever it's possible.
Thank you very much, Amanda. We'll go next to Amber, then Catherine, then Bridget. So, Amanda.
Right. Thanks, Rod. No, thanks for the question, Alexander. Obviously highly contentious, but bicycle safety is extremely important. And we have to balance the bike lanes with cars, the traffic congestion that we're seeing, and a lot of people using those little streets to duck dive through and shortcut places like Hoddle Street, etc. We need to balance that with pedestrian access, as well as people walking with dogs on leads. Often small kids and dogs are a hazard to bike riders as well. So I know that many riders appreciate the separated bike lanes and those bike highways. It gives some space from being doored and for people to keep an eye out for riders when they're turning. especially in this COVID era when there's literally been a rush on bikes and a lot of the bike shops have sold out of bikes. So a lot of people are looking for alternatives to public transport at this stage, and also their cars. Removing parking spots, though, isn't a black and white issue. I think car parks are still very much required, particularly for older people, mobility impaired people, people who travel a distance for their jobs. There's clearly some areas where parking spaces will be required for local residents and businesses to function. Reciprocally, there are areas where there's more than enough spaces for their purpose and a high traffic area of bicycle riders, where removing some of those spaces could improve the flow and safety. I think I would be advocating for an audit of the areas where we want to streamline bicycle lanes and open consultation with the immediate community about how this can be best addressed so that we don't have a repeat of Elizabeth Street. But the other answers before, I think, really highlighted this. We're all thinking along the similar veins.
Thank you very much, Amanda. Catherine?
Thanks, Rod, and thanks, Amber. As everybody has said, I mean, the safety for all of our road users is so important, and we all really value the need for appropriate bike lanes so that people can travel safely on their bikes, and so that people can travel safely on the footpaths, and so that people can get around our city as safely as possible. And the biggest thing that we know is coming up is that we've got to make sure we're talking to the people who are in that area, using that area, coming through that area, and that there isn't just going to be one answer that will solve the problem across the whole area. We need different solutions in each area, and we need to find those practical solutions that will get everybody to be safe and able to use the place in the right way. And that, as Amber said, we also need to make sure that there are still places for people who can't ride or walk. There are still ways for them to get to where they need to go and get there safely. So I think again, as Amber said, we're all agreeing. So how fabulous that we all do want to make sure this is safe roads for everybody to use, and bike lanes are an important part of that.
Very good. Thank you, Catherine. We'll go to Bridget and then Em.
Thank you, Rod. I guess first and foremost, I want to say that I truly believe that I will work towards a 30-kilometre speed limit in our residential street, which I think is relevant to this issue. But I guess I want to sort of sidestep a little bit, and I just want to say that the contentious issue we're all sort of discussing in a roundabout way, the issue of the implementation of the bike paths in the pop-up sort of way, this created a great deal of fracture within our community, and I think that was incredibly problematic. And that happened because it was a completely inadequate community consultation process. There was community outrage, and because of the lack of adequate or good consultation, or a post hoc approach or whatever. And what ended up happening is we got lobby groups that worked to polarize us, and this created divisions in our community where there were none. And this is why community engagement and consultation is so important. And it's not about, and by the way, bad consultation exacerbates feelings of distrust in our community for council. Anyway, community engagement is not about being able to have a say and in some consultation process. It's about how much that consultation actually amounts to anything. It's about whose voices are at the table, at the decision-making table, and it's about transparency about how decisions are made. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Bridget. And Em.
Thanks. I guess I just add that I think, we need to acknowledge that we can't have bike lanes on all of our roads for various issues, including accessibility. I think perhaps something that could help here is awareness, safety awareness. Perhaps we need community engagement on safety awareness around the fact that on some roads, cyclists and car drivers will need to share the space. I think also when we talk about safety awareness, we're not just targeting drivers of motor vehicles, we also need to target cyclists as well. I personally have had to very quickly duck out the way with my baby in my pusher because a cyclist has crossed a pedestrian crossing at an inopportune moment. So yeah, I'd really like to see some more work on some community safety awareness.
Okay, thank you, Emma. Is there anybody else who'd like to add anything there? Okay, well, we'll move on to our next question, which comes from Diane Morgan of Nicholls Ward. Nicholson Street, North Carlton and Fitzroy North Village are under threat of overdevelopment. What is your position on acceptable balance between development and retaining community amenity? Deborah. You're right, Deborah. Just, I think the microphone's, there we go. Then we'll go then to Em and Amanda and Guy and Amber. Oh, sorry, Deb, we can't hear you.
Okay.
That's better, yes.
Okay. Okay, thanks for raising this, Diane. I live close to Queen's Parade, and my family's been involved in the action around saving Queen's Parade, and the neighbourhood has worked tirelessly for years to achieve the outcome, which has been gazetted today, as Amanda pointed out. So the setbacks that have been gazetted are 3 stories and setback of 8 metres. And this is wonderful news for the community that's worked really, really, really hard to achieve this. And I'm hoping that this can set a precedent for other planning applications, and also a model for community grassroots action that's been very successful. So I would support and absolutely support the inclusion of appropriate height limits in sensitive setbacks for developments across Yarra, and amendments to the Yarra planning scheme. I believe that this would provide some confidence for the community and some direction for potential developers, because instead of seeing Yarra as a dinner plate of development, you know, there will be guidelines that and expectations for those developers. And I believe that the voice of the community is important and powerful, and I encourage everybody who's listening to continue to be involved and to give feedback for the council plans whenever possible. Thanks.
Thanks, Deborah. And Em.
Some really great points there, Deborah. I think, you know, the power of community can be absolutely awesome. I'm fully in agreement with you. I think that there should be height restrictions, absolutely. I would also like to go further and see a limit or a cap on the number of applications that are granted for multi-residential dwellings annually, full stop. I know that might seem a little extreme and might seem a little hard to get over the line, but I'd be prepared to do whatever it takes to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Em. And we come next to Annabelle and then Guy. And if anybody else would like to kick in, put up your little hands now. Thanks, Annabelle.
Thanks, Rod. So I mentioned before that heritage protection and conservation is really important to me. And overdevelopment is a serious concern, and we need to make sure that no development adversely affects the significance of our heritage places, especially those ones protected by a heritage overlay. And if I get onto council, I will look at any planning application that comes before me with the full picture of how a development will affect our surrounding residences. And I think that's kind of been mentioned a little bit by my fellow candidates tonight too. You know, and the local amenities and the soul of our beautiful area. Clearly our community is passionate, and a few people have talked about the C321 amendment for Queen's Parade, which was a response to a huge amount of work from the community in writing submissions, researching building history, et cetera, and with a huge amount of success, clearly. This energy from the community is something that I'm also seeing replicated in relation to the Peter Monty development, and hopefully with some similar success. And I'll finish by saying that I would love to see Yarra Council harness this energy from the community a little better in the future and listen a little more closely.
Thanks, Annabelle. And Guy.
Thanks, Rog, and thanks everyone else. Look, I think the most important thing is that the council has a coherent and long-term vision for its planning strategy. There's currently a huge amount of documents. There's the general Yarra planning scheme, there's a heritage strategy, there's a housing strategy, there's all the DDOs and amendments. And I think it creates this environment of uncertainty. We end up having a lot of developers who end up taking these cases to VCAT, which become incredibly exhausting for the community to fight back against. And oftentimes the developers go in reasonably confident that they know that these decisions can be overturned. Likewise, we need to recognize that this is an issue that concerns the state government as well. Like I mentioned earlier, all of these amendments have to go to be approved and gazetted at a state level. And so it's really important that we level with the community and explain to them the full process that happens here in terms of everyone who's involved with it. I think the council has done a huge amount of great work around, for instance, developer contributions. I believe there is a move towards increasing the open space levy for developers. So as Annabelle said, the general amenity that surrounds these medium density residential developments, ensuring that there's an increase in I guess, commensurate open spaces for the residents who might live in smaller apartments as well is super important. Ultimately, I think we're all going to come to the same position here, which is that, of course, we support height controls. Of course, we support appropriate setbacks. It's just a matter of how we actually implement that in a practical way.
Thank you, Guy. We'll go next to Sophie, then Bridget, then Catherine. Sophie?
Guy, once again, reason is very reasonable. As boring, I think this is probably the critical question for Nicholls, isn't it? As much as this might be a boring answer, I think most of these kind of questions are decided on a case-by-case basis and need to be, which I think Annabelle alluded to as well. I'm also conscious that Amanda, Bridget, and other current councillors and local residents groups on the line who have been fighting these some of these developments are aware that the planning scheme only actually allows for so much protection. There's only so much that you can do within it. And thus, to the extent that councillors are keen to protect areas from overdevelopment, they can only do so within the bounds of the law. And to the extent that they make decisions outside of what they're allowed to make, then it goes through an expensive VCAT appeals process, and then money is spent on lawyers instead of spent on parks and libraries and exciting things that we can all use. That's not to say it shouldn't be done. What it is to say is put some energy into changing the planning scheme. I did want to note one positive aspect of development, which is that I think many of us at the moment are really nervous about our suffering local businesses. A lot of that in Nicholls was even before the pandemic. There were some of our local villages, just they weren't seeing the numbers that they used to see. Developments do provide an influx of new customers for our shopping strips. I'm conscious that this is a very different street to Nicholson and to North Carlton and Fitzroy North Village, but those of us down this end of Nicholls have seen Smith Street go from a kind of dying strip with lots of shop closures to just absolutely thriving. It feels busy in a socially distanced manner, even during Melbourne's lockdown. And this is due to the population growth in the area. So while there are downsides and we need to really, really carefully safeguard what's special about Yarra, it is nice to recognise some positives about newcomers in our community as well.
Thank you very much, Sophie. We'll go then to Bridget, followed by Catherine and then Amanda. So Bridget?
Thank you. I've got to say, although it was a really long haul, it was a true pleasure to be part of the great effort of our community, local traders, residents and council, which just delivered the planning controls to protect the heritage, amenity and viability of the Queen's Parade shopping strip. But it also provides clear support and direction for new development. And what came of all that work was that the heritage streetscape will remain framed against the sky as it has for over the last 130 years. Local businesses are supported by retaining shop spaces with rear access. The amenity of privacy and sunlight along the rear laneways has been preserved. But also what came out of this whole amendment was that the medium and high density development was supported on the ex-industrial sectors of the large non-heritage sites. So, and what happened was a compelling case was put to the state government planning panel to protect Queen's Parade, and this provides a really excellent example for the rest of Nicholls. Council currently have an amendment of the C269 amendment out for comment, which will provide Yarra-wide improvements to the planning scheme. If I'm re-elected, I will commit to working with the community to get precinct planning in place for areas for the North Fitzroy Village and the Nicholson Village, because particularly, specifically and immediately, because they're currently under the greatest pressure. So yes, I think we can use the C231 as a great example for what we can do moving forward.
Thank you, Bridget. And Catherine.
Thanks, Rod. As everybody has said, we're all in agreement on how important it is to protect our local heritage and to consider the community needs when things are being proposed. And we've looked at whether people have talked about whether inclusionary zoning is a really important thing to consider, age-friendly communities is an important thing to consider in any new building, what green space is involved, but also looking at what things are different for those residents. Annabelle was talking about the soul of the area that we live in, and we're protecting that, and we are so proud of it, and that's why we love living here. But then, as Sophie said, we've got a lot of newcomers who are coming into some of these developments that have already been built, and we want to make sure that we're including them in that soul of our area and making sure they feel as welcome and love living here as much as all of us in the area. And we need to make sure that information to those people is including them. For example, things like waste management. People who live in some of these new developments, they've got different rules about their recycling because their recycling isn't collected by council, it's collected by contractors who have maybe different rules about what you can put in the recycling bin. So there are so many things that we need to do to make sure we're including people in our community and not losing that flavour and soul that Annabelle mentioned, and making sure we're protecting what we've got here. Thanks.
Thanks, Catherine. And Amanda.
Thank you. Diane's actually asked the $1 million question. It's a very good question. And it's a $1 million question because it's what's being weighed up every time planning decisions are made by a council. And if you ask me the answer directly, where's the balance? I always say the balance lies in favour of amenity, because I think there are some basic things that people have a right to. Things like privacy, the ability to get a good night's sleep, quiet enjoyment of your property, daylight to your home and your outdoor areas, not feeling hemmed in, not being exposed to unreasonable noise and odour. They're pretty basic. The problem is with the planning system, there's no clear definition of what amenity is. It means different things to different people. I think, as Sophie's pointed out, if you live in an apartment block in Fitzroy, good amenity means not being able to hear the party 3 floors up on Saturday night. Whereas in the low-rise heritage protected areas of North Fitzroy and North Carlton, it actually means quite a different thing. And to go directly to Diane's question in the context of Carlton North and Fitzroy North, these have long-standing existing amenity because they are intact and they are very sensitive to change. And that's not a bad thing. It just is something that needs to be acknowledged. So the commercial precincts where development is occurring absolutely need to respect that with a reasonableness test that people have talked about. Height, setbacks, overlooking, overshadowing, wind, visual bulk, and all of that. It doesn't always happen in reality, and I think there is a cultural shift that needs to happen in the way planning assessments are made, and that might push back up the line to the sorts of applications we're seeing. So any day, amenity for me is number one.
Good on you. Thank you very much, Amanda. Sorry, I've lost my piece of paper. Who was, that was it. Does anybody else want to contribute to that? Yes, Amber, go.
Hey, thanks, Rod. I feel like I'm off to the races. The balance, of course, is really tough. But as a council, we will need to strike that balance with input from the local community and the local community groups. I think every candidate here tonight has talked about, where there's permits for abnormally large or crazy developments. It sounds like all councillors will all table these issues seriously and consider them all on their individual merits. I think that there's been some very keen actions, largely due to groups like Protect Fitzroy North and other group actions by the community, and they've done a terrific job and unfortunately need to keep that up. Council's job is really to support appropriate development, but to balance that with the heritage of the areas, particularly in North Fitzroy and Nicholson Street. You know, shops on Nicholson Street and Queen's Parade are closing. Walk down your local street and see the signs. They're all up for rent. Local shops are more important than ever now, and they really need our support to survive. They rely on the increased foot traffic that comes from some of this population density, but I absolutely believe that this can't be at, you know, to the detriment and destruction of the village look and feel that we hold so dear in these areas. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you very much, Amber. All done for that question? Well, then we come to the question I know you've all been waiting for. It's the favourite question of all the questions we've had over the last 3 nights, and I'm looking forward to the answers. This is sent by Andrea Rial of Nicholls Ward on behalf of her 5-year-old granddaughter, Imogen. In my suburb, all the pedestrian traffic lights are men, men, men. This is not fair. Can you please change this for me and all of my friends who are girls? Thank you, Imogen. Who'd like to tackle this one? Oh, everybody. All right, I'm just going to go across the screen. I'm not going to take it in order. Annabelle, we'll start with you, and then Emerald, and then Sophie and Guy.
Yay, Imogen. I was so happy to see this question pop up this afternoon, as I'm sure most of the other candidates or all of the other candidates would be too. I agree that gender diversity and equal representation is so important, especially for those of us with young daughters. And I'm so happy to see Imogen bring this up. While pedestrian traffic lights are a Vic Roads controlled function, if elected, I would love to be able to support Imogen's vision and even go further with a signage audit to see how much further we can go with equal representation on our signage in Yarra in a cost-effective way. The City of Yarra has a proud LGBTIQ+ community, and it's important that we also engage with as many groups as possible on this, but also in everything that we do to ensure that our initiatives are inclusive and representative. And I really want to say this too, supporting Imogen's vision is also important to me because I want to make sure we place value on the initiative that our young people are taking and in empowering our younger generations to speak up and push for change. Imogen sets such a perfect example for children like my daughter Primrose in showing that you can change the world one streetlight at a time. And Prim is lucky enough to be one of the friends that Imogen is referring to in her question. And there's a really cute photo of Imogen and Primrose on my Facebook page, Annabelle Wilson for Yarra City Council. And I'll leave it there on that shameless plug.
Okay, thanks, Annabelle. We'll move on to Sophie.
Yeah, I was also so excited. I think it's such a nice one to end on. All 3 nights end on such a positive question from one of our youngest residents, young Imogen. In my life, I went from an all-girls high school where every student leadership position and nearly every staff leadership position was filled by a woman to a wider world where that was very much not the case. I was lucky enough to attend a residential college during my arts degree, International House, and during my final year, I was the student club president. We had an intercollegiate council at which presidents from all the different colleges would come together and discuss issues that our students were facing. 10 college presidents, and every month I was the only woman in the room. I moved into law where, despite the fact that there have been more women coming out of law schools than men for the last 20 years, a firm is still able to claim that they are impressive or progressive or doing their bit for gender equality because they have 35% women. That's good. Images like those on the pedestrian lights feed into the outlook of it being a man's world, an outlook that gets backed up as kids get older and start looking at our leaders. Events like tonight show that the future does not need to be, and I hope is not, male. Nicholls Ward currently has 3 female councillors and 7 of 9 of us running tonight are women. That may not be the case in the other wards, and it may not be the case on the council as constituted, but I'm pretty proud to be running alongside all of these awesome women and excellent Guy as well. Imogen and her family have got a petition going on change.org, which you can find on all of the Yarra Greens Facebook pages, and I suspect on Annabelle's page. Sign it, share it, spread it around, because I think it's a really important message.
Thank you very much, Sophie. Deborah.
I just wanted to say to Imogen and Andrea that gender equality is very, very important to me, and we're remembering it today, in particular with the passing of Helen Reddy and her anthem, I Am Woman. But symbols are important, but I also think action is important. And I'm echoing the fact that we have, currently, I believe it was 6 of the 9 councillors who are currently women. We've got a woman mayor and a woman CEO of Yarra, and these are all really impressive. And all but one of us here tonight are women. So it's great to see this change afoot. But just like the others, I think it's really important that we check with the broader community about their feelings about this symbol in particular, the one we're talking about, the walking person. Is it a man? Is it a woman? Is it a person? Yeah, we need to check that out. So we need to consult, particularly with the LGBTI community and the broader community in general, and also, as Annabelle said, check our other symbols. Thanks.
I think we just have sort of 6 red lights, 6 amber lights, and 6 green lights. Anyway, Guy, welcome to this maelstrom.
Thank you, Rod. I am conscious of the fact that I'm the only male candidate here tonight and one of only 2 running in Nicholls, but I actually think it's something that we should be really proud of. As Sophie said, Yarra Council has really been at the forefront of this. I believe it was 6 of the current 9 councillors are female, and long may it continue. I think it's also worth taking this time to pay tribute to Susan Ryan, who recently passed away. Who was the first woman to serve in a federal Labor cabinet and was also the first Age Discrimination Commissioner. Did a lot of great work as well with the Labor Party. In terms of Imogen's questions, absolutely, I think it's wonderful to see young people engaging in questions like these. It does raise these questions, as Annabelle said, about how I suppose gender is represented more broadly in terms of the signage or represented in other areas around our community. And it's something that we kind of subconsciously ignore a little bit. And so it's really important that we do have these audits from time to time and look at how we can improve these things. I think it also does open up really good opportunities to speak with the children in our community about broader questions around gender identity. I know that there are some in the community who feel like maybe we shouldn't be speaking to children at a young age about gender identity. But I think it's really important that we normalize these things and speak about them in a respectful way with children from a young age. And I think with questions like these around something as prosaic as pedestrian traffic lights is a really good starting point to dive into that kind of conversation.
Thank you, Guy. Amanda.
I heartily endorse those comments from Guy. And I don't think we've heard the last of Imogen somehow. I've signed her petition and I support her cause at such a young age. It's a very worthy aim. And in fact, the very first light that we had, the very first pedestrian light with a woman in a dress, was in Bridge Road. I initiated that, and it was in acknowledgement of the very first woman councillor in Victoria, Mary Rogers, who was actually on Yarra City Council. She was actually on Richmond, which became Yarra. So we've got double reason to be proud about our women's representation in Yarra. And I think she'd be very proud of the action that Imogen's taken. But I do acknowledge that not all women or gender diverse people wear dresses, and not all gender diverse or men wear pants. But it's the symbolism, and I think it's really important to acknowledge that so many symbols around us do prioritise men. And the message that they send to little girls is that their representation is not important. And I think that's what Imogen is highlighting. I understand as a former teacher how profound those messages can be and how important it is about getting the right balance in symbols around us every day. So yes, I will commit, Imogen and your grandmother, to this change where we can. The Department of Transport controls so many of our pedestrian lights, and also to other changes and upgrades that have been referred to tonight. Thank you very much for participating. It's just wonderful.
It is, isn't it? Thanks, Amanda. And Bridget, and then we'll go to Catherine, and I think that's, Amber. that right? Anyway, we'll go to Bridget and then Catherine and Em. You're coming up too.
Is that me, Rod?
Yes, sorry, Bridget. Yes.
Thank you. Yes, it's Imogen's petition is also on my website, my Facebook page.
Oh my God.
Yes, indeed. But anyway, it was delightful to see this come up as a question. And I must admit, I had a meeting with Imogen and her two elders, her mother and her grandmother, auntie, about this matter, because I was so intrigued and thought it was such an impressive proposition from such a young person. And I just could only applaud her, because I think this issue has much broader implications than it might on the surface appear. It actually ties into issues of gender mainstreaming that I brought to Council back in May 2019 around Council's role in safety and equal access to public space. And that's a topic that we could spend hours discussing, but I just was so impressed with that such a young person was already so tuned into such deep issues. I think that everyone in our community needs to see themselves represented. I think the community would be amenable to this idea, and it would no doubt be borne out by a good consultation process. And one of the main parts of our discussion was about having a less gender normative discourse around the whole concept. So rather than girls and boys, maybe something more around pants and skirts. But that's for the future, I think, in terms of the ongoing discussions. So, yeah.
Well, speaking as a Scotsman, I'd love to see more men in kilts on those signs. So that'd be wonderful. Catherine.
Thanks, Rod, and thanks, everyone. I love the energy everybody's bringing to this, and we all really appreciate Imogen being involved. And as Amanda said, in Yarra we do have Mary Rogers traffic lights, and she was elected to the first woman to council in Victoria 100 years ago this year. And the Mary Rogers traffic lights are in our ward at the moment. They're in Smith Street, and it's really exciting when you do see those. And I wonder whether any of our historical societies could tell us, was Mary Rogers also active as a 5-year-old? Did she start her career then? Where's Imogen going after this? It's fantastic to have people of all ages involved in decisions, and representation matters. So how do we help promote those things and advocate for positive change and representation? Another example is that over the last 20 years, dolls have changed a lot. We now see dolls that are different colours and have different abilities. Why haven't we thought of that with our lights as well? So we're all really keen to advocate for that, and also to look at what else have we got in Yarra that celebrates different people, different genders, different representation, that we can really make sure that people, like Imogen said, she wants to see examples of herself in other things that she's seeing when she moves around our community. So really awesome to be part of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Catherine. And we'll go to Em.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks, Imogen. And I really hope that you sit on a board that of a powerful organisation for change one day, or somewhere like City Council. I'm absolutely supportive of this. Like others have said, I agree that symbols matter. We need to address gender equality in our public places by elevating women in those public places. I would absolutely love to see a survey done of all of our signs. I'd love to see a 50-50 ratio of male-female pedestrian lights. I'd even like to see some of those lights in rainbow. I know that it can be done in a low-cost way, and it's going to take a lot of hard work, a lot of lobbying to get it done. And I love a challenge, and I'm absolutely 110% prepared to do that work for this amazing cause. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, where are we now? Does anybody else want to contribute? I'm sorry, I just lost track of all the hands. So have we all felt that we've made a contribution there? Very good. Well, look, we move into that part of the evening I call nearly the end. We're going to give you each a minute just to, I'm just trying to get the order right so that we, where are we? Oh, there we go. Right, so reverse order as you are on the ballot. You have a minute. We'll be rather strict with it because we're already past the 9 o'clock. But we're going to start with Guy and then Deborah.
Thanks, Rod, and thanks again to all the candidates. It's really only confirmed my suspicions that the residents are going to have a really wonderfully difficult decision to make when they do finally get to voting. That being said, I still hope they vote for me. Look, it's so important that we elect people who are able to work effectively and collaboratively with their council and their state colleagues in order to enact the best outcomes for their community. As the candidate for the Reason Party, I bring a sensible and non-ideological voice to the table. I understand that many people in the community are frustrated at what they perceive to be inefficient bureaucracy or a council that is indifferent to the needs of many in our community. Council is the level of government that oversees some of the most important aspects of our daily lives. And so it is incredibly important that all residents feel like they can easily engage with council on whatever issues are of concern to them and receive a response that is timely, practical, and respectful. I am a fresh and enthusiastic voice, and the only reason that I am here is because I want to see council do better in meeting the needs of our community, both now and into the future. And so I would urge you to vote number 1 for me, Guy Barker, when making your decision, and elect a voice of compassion and reason to council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. And now we move to Deborah.
Hey, thank you. I won't have all the answers for council, but I am, but council needs a diverse representation, a representation of younger people, of culturally and experienced diverse, as well as older voices that represent our community. And that's what the Yarra Labor team brings in the great candidates of Karen and Sandeep, Annabelle, and I hope you'll consider me too. I will bring a health and wellbeing perspective to council in its decision making, and I'll also bring that public health perspective. I'm committed to exploring ways to strengthen our community, to strengthen our social capital, the glue that makes our community strong. And I want to preserve our local heritage. These are the reasons why I came here to live, why we have stayed here, and why all of us and why we are passionate about the fight to keep it as it is. We need to be innovative. We need to look broadly at models that are working elsewhere, and we need to tap into the wisdom of this community to help guide us forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And Sophie.
First, thank you to the organisers for setting up this event. I think we've all seen how valuable it's been and across the 3 nights have been. And thank you to Rod for slogging your way through your 3rd night of questions. And also apologies to Daniel, James or Stephen, who I apparently just misgendered in counting 7 female councillors. As I'm sure you've seen through my answers tonight, I'm an enthusiastic person and I'd be an enthusiastic councillor. I'm also a curious person, which I think is a useful attribute in a role like this. I like finding out how things work, what people care about and why, and how to do things better. I love talking to people and I ask questions. If I don't know stacks about something or I don't have the lived experience required to understand a problem, I haven't lived on a small street that trucks use for deliveries, I haven't lived with a disability, I'll ask you to tell me about it. Other aspects of this role include getting across a huge amount of information, being able to understand complex issues and deal with competing priorities. My job at a commercial firm, brutal as it's sometimes been, and my roles on boards and committees at and after uni have prepared me well for this. I can battle through voluminous information when needed with an eye to the bigger picture. Please reach out to me. It's been such a hard year to talk to residents and I'm really keen to hear what people care about and what your ideas are for our future. If you Google me, my mum informed me earlier this week in a fairly shocked manner, you actually get me. You also get a Sophie Wade from Eden Monaro, who is a Nationals candidate, but I suspect all the green surrounding me will tip you off about which one I am. The Greens are hosting weekly listening posts, so you can come chat to us there, and you can find details on our Facebook pages, which again, hopefully Google will get you to. Thanks again to all the other candidates. It's been a pleasure tonight.
Thank you very much, Sophie. And now we go to M.
Thanks so much, Rod, and thanks to all the organisers for tonight and the fellow candidates for some great comments. Despite running as an independent, I want to wrap up by talking about political parties for a minute. When I was walking around the ward, personally delivering all my flyers, I noticed a lot of Greens posters, so well done to the fellow Greens candidates. But this got me thinking about political parties more generally. I believe that a lot of us vote Greens because we feel like it's the right choice if we care about the environment. I've thought this way too. We wear our vote like a badge of honour to prove our commitment to addressing things like climate change. Similarly, if we vote for Labor, we display our Labor vote to say we care about education, healthcare system, workers' rights. If we vote Liberal, we display our voting preference to say we care about security, sound economic management. The thinking in these associations, I think, have turned our political parties into symbols that represent values we hold dear. But political parties aren't just symbols. We need to remember that they're organisations with obligations to lobbyists and special interest groups. I think that party membership can come with obligations and responsibilities. And I think that sometimes people who are members of political parties do need to follow party lines on issues that matter. I think as an independent, I can be passionate about whatever I believe in. I can be passionate about the environment, and I am, in fact. When I walk around with my 2 young children, I often, if I've got free hands, collect rubbish off the street and put it in the bin so it doesn't end up in our waterways. And I teach my kids to help do this too. And I believe that this can do more for protecting the environment than taking a photo of myself holding up a plaque and posting it on social media. As an independent, I can be passionate about the economic recovery of our community and our security, including from acts of vandalism to private property. I believe that it's unfair that resources are dedicated to cleaning up council property and not local residences. If money is tight, I'll personally volunteer my services to go and help people clean up unwanted pictures and words from the exteriors of their homes, and I encourage other residents to volunteer with me. As an independent, I can be passionate about supporting.
We'll have to wrap up there. You've gone over the minute.
Okay, no problems. So I'll listen, I'll work hard for you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Amber.
Thanks. So we're at a crossroads for Yarra's future and your vote counts. I'm not a seasoned bureaucrat. In fact, I've never stood for election before. And I've decided to run for a seat on Yarra Council now because I think my skills and experience could help to make a difference and prioritise getting our community back on its feet and protecting the heritage of our area. And I care. As a long-term lawyer and an animal welfare campaigner, I always had a strong sense of what is right and wrong and the importance of having a voice at the table. I can bring an experienced and compassionate voice to council, one who will strive to achieve rational outcomes for our heritage, our struggling local businesses, our diverse wildlife and companion animals, and the aged community. Like you, I expect our councillors will get things done and progress with momentum. It's important for this next crop of councillors you choose to have the skills to negotiate common ground with others and to make progress on some of our more complex issues. And let's face it, Yarra's got a couple of them. As we come out the other side of coronavirus, this is going to be more pertinent than ever. I think we need to get back to the reason why we all came here or why your families raised you here in the first place. It's a special, diverse place to live, and we have so much to be thankful for. Representing your voice, I'll strive for even better outcomes for Yarra and a kinder council. Please reach out to me at Facebook or email me anytime for a chat. Vote 1 for Amber Anderson. Thanks.
Good on you, Amber. Thank you very much. And now, Bridget.
Thank you, Rod. Have you got me? Sorry. Yes. Have you got me?
Yes,
Good.
we can.
Yes. I'm an independent, and I certainly favour a majority of independent councillors, and I hope that will be the outcome of the election. I say this because my experience with party representatives on council is that they generally hold their cards pretty close to their chests. They don't readily share information and are unwilling to discuss issues through. I strongly believe our community has the expertise and knowledge to lead council decision making. As an independent, I'll continue to work collaboratively with the community taking forward 5 key priority issues. The first one, obviously, is community-led decision-making. Number 2 would be around the COVID recovery. We need rate relief, support for the most vulnerable to address the unequal impact on women, youth and local small business. We need to revitalise local precincts, support the creative community, and number 3, planning reform and heritage protections need an overhaul with stronger heritage controls for sympathetic and appropriate development and sustainability. We also need to improve accountability for environmental damage, such as the loss of 6 metres of riverbank and numerous significant trees behind the Amcor development.
I'll get you to wrap up, Bridget. Thank you.
Okay, environment and traffic. I have experience, knowledge of the issues in Nicholls ward and have forged deep relationships within the community. Please vote number 1, Bridget O'Brien.
Thank you very much, Bridget. And now, Catherine.
Thanks, Rod, and thanks to the organisers. Great to have these 3 sessions across Yarra this week. It's been really interesting to learn about all the areas across Yarra. And when your ballot packs arrive in the next week or so in the mail, remember that you're voting for 3 council candidates to represent you for Nicholls ward. And as you've heard tonight, there's a great range of people, and we all connect on a number of things that we need action, like protecting heritage, limiting overdevelopment, climate action, age friendliness. We need to include all of these things in our planning and thinking and decisions and actions. I believe in working with people to achieve practical solutions. As we've said earlier, we've got a diverse range of people living in this ward with heaps of great ideas. So let's keep working together so that we come out of this pandemic even stronger. My mother moved to the slums of Fitzroy. She chose to move to the slums of Fitzroy in the 60s as part of her commitment to social justice. And I do share my parents' values, if you're wondering, if you know them. I'm an independent candidate. I'm not here for party politics or to be an expert on any particular topic. I'm here to listen. I'm a local person who cares about speaking up for our community on local decisions. So let's keep making Nicholls ward a great place to grow up and grow old. Vote for me to be your community advocate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Catherine. And Amanda.
Well, thank you to Fitzroy Residents Association and Yarra Resident Collective for organising tonight's meeting. And I just want to pay tribute to FRA for the role they've played over lots of years of Meet the Candidates and promoting democratic processes, and especially providing us with an opportunity tonight to connect with the community in this very odd time that we're living through. I apologise to Australia's National Living Treasure, our host, for my school teacher pickup early in the night, and hope you've recovered.
It was vital.
Okay. Thanks to everyone who submitted some really excellent questions too. I'm actually partway through completing a local government fellowship on deliberative democracy. I've been unable to continue because it involved travel due to the shutdown. But my early findings suggest that comparatively, Yarra is actually doing really well in terms of access of the community to participation in democratic process. And while we can always do better, and we've heard a lot about that tonight, my experience of councils over many years is that there's a real willingness to listen, respond and do better. And it's a hallmark of local government in Yarra, which I hope will continue. We've heard a lot tonight and the other nights about independence versus party membership. It'll be no surprise to people here that I'm a proud member of the Greens, and that's because it's a reflection of the values I hold dear. And I'm delighted to stand alongside Sophie Wade. Our skills and experience complement each other beautifully. But I'm also a team player of the highest order. The next 4 years is going to be very important for Yarra. We're going to have to work together like never before. I'm really looking forward to a progressive and cohesive council who will work together in the best interests of the community. I will play my part and I'll bring my energy, passion, commitment and experience to the next 4 years. And that's my number 1 commitment to you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. And Annabelle, to wrap it up, your 1 minute starts now.
Thank you very much to you, Rod, for hosting us, and to the Fitzroy Residents Association and the Yarra Residents Collective for having us, and to everyone who's tuned in and everyone who submitted questions. One of the things that I think is really important on council is making sure that whoever you elect works together as a functional team. As many people have said, Nicholls voters are quite spoilt for choice here, as you can see tonight. And over the last few weeks, I've connected with a number of the faces on my screen here and a number of the candidates running in Nicholls ward with some really positive discussions. One of my other favourite parts of this campaign has been hearing from locals and getting to know my neighbours. So please feel free to reach out to me and have a chat. You can find a little bit more about our vision for Labor, our vision for Yarra at yarralabor.org, and follow my campaign on Facebook, which I shamelessly mentioned before. The Yarra community is vocal, organised and passionate, and that's what I love to see. I see firsthand the incredible power of grassroots advocacy on a day-to-day basis. And as your neighbour, I'd be a proud advocate alongside you as your representative on council. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Annabelle. And thank you to all our candidates. It's been an absolute delight to meet you all. Some I've met before, but to meet you in this environment's been wonderful. As Annabelle said in her closing remarks, you are really spoilt for choice in Nicholls. I don't know how you're going to make the decision. It would be really nice if you could elect them all. They seem to agree on so many of the issues. So I'd like you to give a virtual round of applause. They won't hear it, but I think you should give it. So for all of you watching, let's give a round of applause. That's wonderful. And thank you so much for watching. And we're going to wrap up now. I'm going to invite all the candidates, including Guy, to join in a chorus of I Am Woman. Guy, you'll have to sing You Are Woman. And we'll start now. Are you ready? On the count of 3. 1, all microphones on. All microphones on. Let's go. Get them all on together. This is going to be, it's a great tribute day. Come on, get those microphones on. Guy, put your microphone on. Yeah, ready? And Bridget, you haven't got your microphone on. Amanda, come on, Sophie, let's get this going. And Guy, get that. Look, you can join in, Guy. There we go. And 1, 2, 3.
I am
Woman, make me wrong.
Number 2.
I am woman, hear me roar.
That's absolutely. You might make a great team, but you make an awful choir. Firstly, thank you all once again. We thank the organisers. They've worked tirelessly to make this thing work so seamlessly. You've all come out of it wonderfully well, and you'll have many, many fans. Even if they don't vote for you, if they meet you in the street, they'll feel they know you. And that's, I think, a wonderful thing. And for all those people watching, thank you. And remember, it is available on Facebook to watch ad infinitum. So thank you all very much, and good night to our candidates, and good night to you.
Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, everyone.
Good
Thanks,
night.
Rod.
Thank you,
Oh, don't forget, make Yarra great again.
everyone.
There we go. Bye all.
Bye.
Bye.
Drop.
Thank you.